Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and good afternoon also to Helen. I know some of you have seen Helen on the screen, but she is there, aren't you? Can you hear me, Helen? Yes, that was a yes. I think there's a double first this afternoon. Firstly, obviously, this is the first service that I've ever known that we've actually broadcast. Never mind broadcast all the way to Israel, and it's actually a marvel that we're able to do that. And so pleased that we're able to have you with us, Helen. I know you can't see Helen, but Helen can see me. And she is looking intently. In fact, every time I show the camera at a new face, she looks inquisitively at the screen. The other thing, of course, that is new is the first time in my recollection in the shul, which is at least 26 years, that we have had the pleasure of dedicating a new set of stained glass windows, and I think you will all agree they are an absolutely splendid set of windows. And I'd like to thank the Olivestone family very much indeed for their generous donation of these windows. And we are, of course, able to have both David and Cedric here this afternoon. And David, I think you're speaking first.
Sorry. On behalf of my mother, Shetichia, and my brothers, Ellis, Cedric, and our families, I'd like to thank you all for coming and being part of this today. Particularly, I'd like to welcome members of the shul, the guests, other friends of ours from Edgware and beyond, and family members who've come from far and wide, in particular my Uncle Bert, who's my father's youngest brother, who's here with us today. This young man over here. I want to very much thank Diane Lappian, who is going to grace us with his message very shortly. My cousin Steve Robbins for davening today. I want to thank those who were involved in the production of the windows. A friend of ours, Sharon Geller Metal, who was the calligrapher. Mark Gerstein of Lead and Light, who was the artisan who made them, who's here with us today. And in particular, Russell Grossman, the president of the Assuran, without whom none of this would have been possible, and who was absolutely wonderful and cooperative in making this happen. My mother, of course, asked me to say, and she can say it for herself, how much she regrets not being here, and but she's in very good form. Seal and I have spent a couple of wonderful days with her this week. Took her out shopping, took her out have pizza for lunch, and we said, are you tired, you want to go home? She said, no, whatever you want to do next, that's what I want to do, and that's, of course, the way she always is. My brothers and I grew up in this shul. Now, when I say this shul, I mean this building that we're standing in now. Many of you probably don't know that the upper building where we just davened mincha is a later addition, and the original shul was just this hall, which was divided up more recently into classrooms. Now, when this was the shul, the Oren Kodesh stood here, the bima stood in the middle, just opposite the doors, the ladies sat at the back, the office was a hut in the courtyard, and of course we were here all the time. Just as an aside, though, I want to say that yesterday I davened mincha at the new Adas in the former Presbyterian church. Now, nobody knows, except the Olivestone family, nobody else remembers, I'm sure, that the Yeshurun synagogue, David, you remember your father, of course, who was very active in the shul.
1946.
The shul davened in the hall of the Presbyterian church. They lent it to us. In fact, our grandfather was the chazan there on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur at one point. But our brother Ellis is surely the only one who can ever claim to have had his bar mitzvah in the church. So if the shul was our second home, I have to say that the shul's second home was our house. There was probably never a day that went by when shul business wasn't transacted in our house. The meetings of the honor officers were around our dining room table. And of course, when there was a rabbi coming to try out, he always had the Shabbos meals with us. Now this was before Rabbi Lewis, before Diane Loppian, before his uncle, the Lahavdim Chaim Chaim, Rabbi Ben-Zion Loppian, before Rabbi Getzel Ellenson, before Diane Morris Swift, all of whom served the shul at various points. But when the rabbis came to our house for Shabbos, my brothers and I enjoyed the various characters. We still have some stories we tell about some of them. But we had our own, our own test to see if the rabbi was suitable and learned enough to serve the shul. You see, we had amongst the benches, we had one which was really falling apart, and the middle pages had fallen out. And Monty, Ellis, Cedric, and I always made sure to give that bencher with the missing pages to the rabbi. We wanted to see how he handled it. Besides what he did for this shul, my father, of course, was active on every committee in every single organization there was in the Jewish community. Whether it was the JNF or the Mizrahi or the London Board of Shkita or the London Board of Mikvahos or the Board of Jewish Religious Education or the Board of Deputies or the Federation of Synagogues. But there's no doubt that the activity he was most proud of was this shul, the Yeshurun Synagogue Edgware. He founded the shul. He used his formidable will and talents to lead it for nearly 2 decades, totally unopposed and unchallenged here. And he put his imprint on it to make it really the leading synagogue for the Federation of Synagogues. And it's really most appropriate that we dedicate a window to his memory in the Beis Medrash that the shul was most generous enough to name after him. The second window is for our brother Monty. Monty was a person of very, very high principle. He was someone who saw only the good in everyone he met. He was enormously generous and charitable. And even though he lived several thousand miles away from us in California, he was very much a warm and an integral part of the family and part of every family simcha. Monty died too young. Monty and our father died within 3 weeks of each other, just about 3 weeks apart. And they're buried just 1 row apart at the cemetery in Kibbutz Lavid. So it's again fitting that we dedicate the second window to Monty. Now I want to say something to those of you who may be thinking of dedicating other windows in this room. A couple of points I want to make. The first is that it's, and believe me, I tried, very difficult to come up with suitable phrases with the word Yeshurun in. So if you're looking to do it, get in quick, there's only 1 or 2 left. The second thing is that Seal and I used to belong to a shul, a venerable old shul in Manhattan, when we lived in New York, called Congregation of Tzedek, and it had magnificent stained glass windows down both sides of the shul. And the shul wanted to encourage others to put their names on the windows. So they sent out a letter asking people to think about doing this. But the letter wasn't very carefully proofread and said that several of our very beautiful stained glass widows are still available. If you want to get some more information, please contact the shul office. So please do proofread if you want to do that. Anyway, we want to thank the shul for allowing us this opportunity to memorialize Obi Moira Avram Baruch Ben Arav Chanoch Olav Shalom, our brother Meir Ze'ev and Avram Baruch Olav Shalom here in this shul in this Beis Medrash. And we pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu